Hello, welcome to this video. Now, as a 12-year-old in 1980, if you've asked me what sort of music I liked, I would have, without thinking, told you that my favourite music was heavy rock. I never called heavy metal. I didn't call anything hard rock. For me, it was heavy rock. You had rock music and then you had heavy rock. And these were exemplified by a whole bunch of bands that had come up through the 1970s. On this video, I would like to go through my 10 favourite heavy rock albums from the 1970s. Now, these have all been pulled from my collection, and I am under the assumption if after 40 years or 45 years these albums are still here, I have kept them because I really like them. And I am aware that I went to go and find certain records that I thought I had, which I thought I should have in my collection, but they're no longer there. Now that means that at some point in history, I decided to take my Judas Priest albums down to the second-hand record shop and swap them for jazz rock and prog albums. I had a very extensive collection of heavy rock albums, and a lot of them are no longer with us. And on top of that, some of them I think are there and still I start going and looking for them. When I started this channel and I was talking in front of just these vinyl albums, there was another third that were missing. I've now been able to locate them in different parts of the house, and I've been able to bring all my CDs together. There is still stuff missing, but it's surprising me the albums I no longer own. And where I do have one missing, I will endeavour to go and get it, hopefully on vinyl first if I can. So I have whittled down my 10 favourite rock albums. This will probably give you an idea of where I'm coming from as a rocker. I was a big fan of 70s heavy rock, and I was a big fan of 80s new wave of British heavy metal. And all those Def Leppard and Iron Maiden albums, and they've all gone missing, I'm afraid. So obviously I grew out of those albums quite quickly. There's no Venom here. I just can't find any of it. The only stuff that's really left of the new wave of British heavy metal is a couple of Iron Maiden albums, and I thought I had more than I had. Anyway, this is why it's interesting, exploring my record collection again, because it makes me realise certain things. So here we have my 10 favourite heavy rock albums from the 1970s. Quite surprising, and I will, at the end of it, give you a conclusion of what I've learnt going through this. So at number 10, I have Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy. Thin Lizzy made a lot of albums. Before they got a second guitarist, which I think was on Jailbreak, was it? Or was it before then? They were this sort of Irish folky blues rock band, and I'm not so keen on that era at all. And then you get the classic Thin Lizzy with Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham, and then Brian leaves, Gary Moore comes in, and then you get Snowy White Deer, then you get John Sykes. Now, the album that I would probably go for as a studio album is probably their last Thunder and Lightning, and that is veering on a new wave of British heavy metal album. There is so much that Lizzy do that I never felt there was a definitive studio album for me. And the thing is, as much as I love the heavy sort of Jailbreak stuff, I also love stuff like Dancing in the Moonlight or Sarah. I loved all of that. And so the only way to really get that is to get the greatest hits of Thin Lizzy, which I do still have in the collection. And I nearly brought that one out, but I thought if I had to choose between that and this live album, this is one of the great live albums, although people do question whether it is 100% live. But for me, I don't care. It sounds like Thin Lizzy, to be honest. We get Jailbreak, Emerald, Southbound, Rosalie, Dancing in the Moonlight, Massacre, Still in Love with You, Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed, Cowboy Song, The Boys Are Back in Town, Don't Believe a Word, I love that tune, Warriors, Are You Ready, incredible stuff, Suicide, Shalala, Baby Drives Me Crazy, and then it ends up with The Rocker. I'm a rocker. Right, so this is just one of the great live albums. It's there along with Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest, which also is is that really live? And Strangers in the Night. And any of those three could have occupied this 10th spot. But for me, I thought, which one do you look like the best? Annie, which one's the favourite? If you had to pick one, which would it be? And it would be Thin Lizzy. I absolutely love Thin Lizzy. I have a story about Thin Lizzy for you. In 2004, they reformed. Obviously, Phil Lynott was dead at that point. So John Sykes came in not only playing guitar, but also singing. And he sounded great. The late, great John Sykes sounded great and sang like Phil Lynott. And they did a UK tour. I was playing with the Ian Parker Band at that point, and I played on that UK tour opening up for Thin Lizzy. So I spent the week with them. On drums was another late great musician that so sadly departed us, Michael Lee, who had been the drummer with the Page and Plant Band and was before me in that lineage of drummers playing for Robert Plant. So we sort of hooked up with our sort of combined, we've played with Robert Plant sort of club that we are in. And so I got to know Michael Lee. He was a lovely guy on that tour. When we got to the final show, it was at a place called the Renfrew Ferry. And I will now tell this story now that John Sykes has sadly departed our world. When we got there, the Renfrew Ferry was a wonderful venue. It was a gig on a ferry. I thought it was wonderful. And you had to bring all the gear along these sort of gangplanks to get on stage. And I think when John got there, the thought of seeing all these roadies, you know, bringing his big Marshall stacks across these things, he got a bit miffed. I think it was the end of the tour. And he did get a bit grumpy, it has to be said. And Scott Gorham, who was like a legend to me, he turned around and asked me if I'd got a cigarette. I did smoke back then, so I said yes. And we went off for a cigarette, and he had a bit of a moan about what was going on. And I said, it's just a gig, you know. And anyway, John Sykes decided he didn't want to do the sound check, but would do the gig. So he went. So it ends up with just, can't remember who the bass player was, Michael Lee and Scott Gorham just testing and then singing some songs and playing. And it descends into a little bit of a rubbish sound check, if I remember rightly. And I was chatting to Michael, and he'd got this great big double bass drum kit with, I believe, 28-inch bass drums. So the biggest bass drums I've ever seen in my life. And he was a tall guy as well. And he said, do you want to have a play? And so I jumped up, and for about 5 minutes, I jammed with Scott Gorham and this bass player. With John Sykes actually sat on his case watching. Now, for me, I have always classed that I did technically play for Thin Lizzy. And I believe that's the only example on this list that I can come up with. The great Thin Lizzy, absolutely love them. Right, now, at number 9, I thought it's going to be Rainbow Rising by Rainbow, one of my favourite albums. I went to get it, I cannot find it. I can't find it, so I need to go and find that album. And this is what's interesting for me. That does need to be in my collection. It's essential. Rainbow Rising is one of the great albums from the 1970s in terms of rock music, in terms of prog rock, prog metal, and in terms of Ritchie Blackmore. What I do have on CD is the very best of Rainbow. Now, the version that I did have, which is obviously lost, was actually a double up. They released, I think in the early 80s, Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, the first album, and Rainbow Rising together. And that's what I thought I had, but I can't find it. So it's lovely to have this because we've actually got Man on the Silver Mountain, Catch the Rainbow, Starstruck and Stargazer on this, all from those first two albums. But we've also got Kill the King, Long Live Rock and Roll, and Gates of Babylon from Long Live Rock and Roll, and that's pretty monumental as well. Then we get Since You've Been Gone, All Night Long, I Surrender, Can't Happen Here, Jealous Lover. Now, some of you might be going, oh, that's not like Rainbow Rising. Those are the tracks that got me into rock music. All Night Long was released February 1980, and when I heard it, I dropped all the sort of Barbara Dickinson and B.A. Robinson I was listening to. I had found what I was looking for. It was All Night Long. So this album's not a bad one to have. This is on the sort of Polydor label. It's a best of that came out in 1997. I picked it up cheap. You know, I play it all the time. That's the one I play because it's on CD. So that's what I have got at number 9. At number 8, I have this brilliant album, Long Misty Days by Robin Trower. I'm a big Robin Trower fan. When it comes to blues rock guitar players, you know, I know people going about Dave Gilmour here and Andy Latimer, all the proggers love them, and then you've got your Eric Claptons and your Peter Greens and all these guys, and they're all wonderful, and I love blues guitars. People think I don't like it, they think I think it's simple, but I've always been more interested in a guitarist making their own way into that. Robin Trower does precisely that. And the thing with Robin Trower is he's got a little bit of that Hendrix sort of psychedelicness, you know, he's sort of like Steve Hillage, that's there. But he's also got a very stately and beautiful way of phrasing. So there's a touch of the Dave Gilmour there as well. And with this lineup of James Stewart on bass and vocals and Bill Lawden on drums, this is one hell of a funky band. Right, and I enjoy a funky band. You'll see this when you actually look at the ones I like. I like the funk. I like stuff that grooves, right? This album's funky in its grooves. It also has James Stewart not only on bass, but on vocals. The late, great James Stewart, who was a Scottish singer, and for me has got one of the best rock voices in history. This is equal to Paul Rodgers, it's equal to Terry Reid, it's equal to a Chris Cornell. It is up there with one of the great voices. This album is not the famous album. Everyone goes for Bridge of Sighs. I believe this is the album that came out afterwards. This is the one I picked up. I actually picked this up off the back of a van on holiday in Cornwall. We'd been swimming and there was a bunch of albums for sale. And I picked up this, and I picked up a Best of Jeff Beck album. They also had a copy of Gummer, and I did and ah of which one to get. And in the end, my dad said you could either have those two or the Gummer, but I'm not buying all of them. That's £5 in total, I remember. And I decided to go for this and the Jeff Beck. It was the right decision because Gummer is not as good as this. That is one of my favourite rock albums of all time. Right, so we are now at 10, 9, 8. We're at number 7, aren't we? This is essential, and I think if I wasn't going to my record collection, I wouldn't have pulled this out. But this is one of my favourite albums of all time. It is the monumental Whitesnake, Live in the Heart of the City, the double album that comes from the recordings of the early Whitesnake from 1978. And then, and we're talking about the 1970s, but these were recorded in June 1980, so forgive me for that, which I think were recorded at Hammersmith Odeon. Whitesnake, what a lineup. What a lineup. David Coverdale on vocals, and then the incredible twin guitar attack of Bernie Marsden and Mickey Moody. Then we've got the incredible rhythm section of Neil Murray, who before that was playing fusion with Alan Holdsworth and the guys in Colosseum. Incredible bass player. Ian Pace on drums and John Lord on keyboards. It's like we've got 2/5 of Deep Purple going on here. I do not understand why Whitesnake aren't held in reverence like a Deep Purple or a Black Sabbath. I don't understand it. This stuff's incredible. And what we've got here is we've got Come On, Sweet Talker, Walking in the Shadow of the Blues, Love Hunter, all great from the early albums. And then we get Ready and Willing and Fall for Your Loving. And although I ain't gonna cry now, or Take Me With You is really brilliant. Ready and Willing on side 2 is like an extended version, and it's, I mean, Ready and Willing is one of the great rock tracks. That riff, it's just brilliant. It's heavy, it's bluesy, it's funky, it's like R&B, it's like heavy rock. It's brilliant. Coverdale's brilliant on here. And then we get, on the second disc, Might Just Take Your Life, Deep Purple tune, Lie Down, Come On, Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, one of the great rock tunes of all time. And then we get their versions of Trouble and Mistreated, those sort of Deep Purple centerpieces. I have to say, I love Whitesnake playing Mistreated. Great cover. What else can I say about this? When I was playing with Ian Parker, I did the Paul Jones Blues show up at the now long gone Pebble Moose Studios up in Birmingham, and it was a session between us and Bernie Marsden. And I walked up and said, you know, this album is just like one of the greatest albums. And he says, everyone says that, you know. So I was glad to be able to tell him that, because at the moment, you know, we no longer got John Lord with us. We've no longer got Bernie with us. It's a shame, isn't it? Right, this is a weird one. But for me, growing up, this album was one of the heavy rock albums of the 1970s. Really was. And you have to take it on board, as I have got it here, because it's actually 3 albums all in one. And it is Rush's Archives. And Archives came out, I think, late 70s, early 80s. And it features the first 3 albums. I bought this, or in fact, my mum bought this from Macro. A very wise choice, Mom. She went up and said, can you get me a record? I'd been going on about how much I loved Rush because I'd got Moving Pictures and I loved that album. And she said, oh, I've got you this. And it was only cheap and it's got 3 albums on. What a brilliant mom, eh? Now, the reason I pulled this out is because I prefer Fly By Night and Caress of Steel to 2112. The obvious one would be to pull out 2112. Although 2112 is a prog album, it is also a heavy rock album. Here, exactly the same with these two. But the debut album, Rush's debut album, I adore. It's a great rock album. Absolutely Finding My Way, Working Man, Here Again, What You're Doing. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Absolutely amazing stuff. We open it up. We get a picture of Rush there. This archives. Can you imagine getting this as a kid? Right? Got 3 albums in here. Absolutely incredible. So that's what I've got. Whatever number that was, it'd be Rush. Rush have to be on there. I know they're a prog band, but they're more heavy rock than prog. If you think about it, they are one of the classic 70s heavy rock bands. Now we get into a collection of albums that are just... They're why I'm here. On another excursion up to Macro... my mom picked up another album, which was a bit of an outlier because I didn't own an album by this band, but she knew I might like them. I don't know if my mom had some vague 70s knowledge of heavy rock bands. So she go, well, I got you this album, and I didn't know what it was. It was this. Now, this came out in the early 1980s. It is a repackaging of Deep Purple's BBC recordings. There is a recording of the early incarnation of the Gillan Band from 1970, and they do Speaking, Ring That Neck, Child in Time, Mandrake Root. And then we get, from the same tour as Made in Japan, Highway Star, Strange Kind of Woman, Lazy, Never Before, Space Trucking, and Loose Seal. It's a 2 record set spanning 70 and 72. For me, side 3 and side 4 are greater than Made in Japan. For me, they're playing even more out there. And then the 1970s stuff has a whiff of that psychedelic band that existed before Gillan came in. Very experimental, very out there. This changed my attitude towards music because up until then, I was listening to rock. I like riffs, I like heavy stuff. My mom bought me this and I put it on, and we had tracks that were like 22 minutes long and they were long jams. And my dad being a jazz fan, I was like, hang on. You can do like jazz soloing in rock? Oh my God, I didn't realise this. And this is the album that did it for me. This is absolutely a classic album now. Phil Aston over at, what's his YouTube called? Now Spinning, is it? Great YouTube. And he's so knowledgeable on Deep Purple. He's done a deep dive into the live albums by Deep Purple. And it seems that this has been released in a number of versions. And there's been a release just of the, Made in Japan tour stuff here, and he put that up very high. But for me, this is an album that changed my life. Absolutely incredible. Look at them on the back. So many pictures as well. When you're a kid and you've heard this band Deep Purple and your mom's bought you an album, you want to know about them, so you got lots of photographs. So then you've got, is it Simon Robinson, the keeper of the flame back then? Don't know what he's doing now, whether he's still keeping the Deep Purple flame. But he's written so much. You've got so much information off this album. Absolutely incredible. Incredible. One of my favourite rock albums of all time. So we are now getting to, I believe, the final 4. All right. I wanted to put a Cream album on here, but I don't think there is an actual Cream album that delivers what I want from Cream, which is all the hits and then a good slice of the live stuff, but not too much. There isn't one of those out there, really. And also with Hendrix. Hendrix has got so many great albums, and he almost goes beyond this category. I have to go back to the album that I grew up with Hendrix, which was the album for me, which was this one, Axis Boulder's Love. Not as archaic and groundbreaking as Are You Experienced, a little bit funkier perhaps, and not as out there and proggy as Electric Ladyland. Now, I've said a million times that my favourite album is The Band of Gypsies, but I don't know whether we can really class that as a heavy rock album. I don't know if we can class this as a heavy rock album, but Spanish Castle Magic, I would say, is pretty heavy, isn't it? This is the magical mix for me of Hendrix, is this album. This, if I had to take one Hendrix album, it would be me, would be this. It's got really concise little tracks, like You Got Me Floating, almost like pop tunes. But we also have things like If 6 Was 9, and we have things like Axis Boulder's Love, Castles Made of Sand, Wait Until Tomorrow. There's a whole bunch of Little Wings on here. There is some classic Hendrix here. This is absolutely great album. When was this made? Was it 68, 67? So that's what I've got at number 4. Right, this is my favourite list. Black Sabbath have to be on here. They're at number 3. They are the ultimate heavy rock band, and they are the original heavy metal band. For me, if I was doing a more objective list, you would have Paranoid here. If I was looking at heaviness, we would have Sabotage here. But you ask me what my favourite Deep Purple album is, my favourite Black Sabbath album is, and I'm always going to say this one, Black Sabbath Volume 4. For me, this journey from this sort of heavy electric blues all the way up to the weirdness of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, then the heaviness of Sabotage, then the sort of real weirdness of Technical Ecstasy, and then Never Say Die. There's a journey. And for me, the darkest, heaviest bit of that journey is this album. This is the famous album when they're off their faces. You know, this is the album where they did a track called Slow Bind, which is a tribute to the amount of coke that they were sticking up their nose at that time. And actually, their disassociation from what's going on this album makes it even greater. For me, this is the great Black Sabbath album, and it contains their finest moment, which is Supernauts. I just love how there is real little consideration about that cover, right? We got a photograph of Ozzy made orange, horrible, and then this horrible typeface around it. You open it up and you get a picture of Tony Iommi and Geezer. Bill Ward is just no picture of him on here. That's it. It's just so heavy. Everything about this album's heavy. Wonderful. Don't know what more I can say about this one. I'm having it. They just can't be arsed. They can't be arsed. And it's a masterpiece. Right, number 2. Again, we're dealing with my favourite albums. If I was being objective, there would be a different album here. But for me, one of the greatest heavy rock bands of all time is AC/DC. They are at number 2. If I'm pushed to what my favourite album is, it's this masterpiece. Let There Be Rock. Not Power Age, not Highway to Hell, not Back in Black, not Dirt Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. It's this one. For me, this is the one. And they are sublime on this. Go Down. Opens up with Go Down. Go Down. God, absolutely amazing. Then Dog Eat Dog. And then we get Let There Be Rock, which is 6 minutes long. It's almost like they've gone prog. I'm astonished by that track every time I hear it. It's so grandiose. It's like the Bible of heavy metal almost, with Bon Scott as the preacher. And they do things that you just shouldn't be able to get away with, you know, just like having a tune that's just going, that's it, you know, like 2 notes, and then Bon Scott just sort of pontificating about this sort of biblical genesis of rock, you know. He makes words up, like he says, you know, when he's describing everyone hearing Chuck Berry and they're all playing the guitars, and he says, and then suddenly there was 10 million fingers, and you could hear the fingers finging. What does that mean? The guitar parts is incredible. The first solo by Angus Young is just incredible rock guitar. The second guitar solo he does on Let There Be Rock is like a history of a rock and roll guitar. It's incredible stuff. Then they do Bad Boy Boogie, which is just unbelievable. Problem Child, unbelievable. Overdose, unbelievable. Hell, that ain't a bad place to be. And then almost like for me and for my generation, their defining tune wasn't Back in Black or Thunderstruck. It was Whole Lot of Rosie, wasn't it? Angus. This is it. There we go. Awful cover. They've taken a picture of AC/DC on stage. Angus is in a good pose, as you can see, but the rest of them aren't. And Bon looks like he's just looking at his arm. Why is he looking at his arm like for? I never really quite got that. Terrible. And then they cut it out and put this horrible blue sky. It's just awful. And then when you turn it over, you just get a solitary picture of Angus Young. Brilliant. What have I got at number 1? This album's perfect. And I know for other people it's not, but for me it is. Led Zeppelin 4. What am I going to say about this? God, I've had this album for a while. You bought it on vinyl, you got that. The lyrics of Stairway to Heaven and that little chap there reading out of some book, all very sort of mid-Victorian English aesthetic. We get that there. That's the name of the album, apparently, those 4 symbols. We get this lovely typeface. This has all been handwritten. And I don't know if you've seen, but on my version, I have managed to get a blue fountain pen and write, belongs to Andrew Edwards. I put it on there so I could be a part of it. I so wanted to be a part of this album. A shot of Birmingham. I know that this is where I live. I know that scene. And here we have this sort of not medieval, it's like rural English aesthetic. And then you open them up and you have those 2 things together. Absolutely wonderful. Inside the Hermit. It's just, the album itself is incredible. It's mysterious. It seems really old. It seems like it's always been there. You can't believe it's been made by people in their early 20s. It's just this thing that just exists in my life. Put side 1 on. Black Dog. One of the greatest rock tunes ever made. Rock and roll. They make a nod back to where they came from. And they managed to do a rock and roll pastiche, which is absolutely incredible. And then you get the acoustic Battle of Evermore. All Tolkien and foresty and wonderful. And then we have Stairway to Heaven, that for my age group was the greatest song ever made. Switch it over onto side 2 and it all gets slightly weirder. Misty Mountain Hot with that circular droning vocal of Roberts. 4 Sticks in this weird time signature with this weird drumming. And then we get the sort of Joni Mitchell inspired Going to California, which was always a low point for me when I was a kid, but I put it on the other day. That middle section, absolutely beautiful. Anybody who says these are up with Sepp's greatest tracks need their head examined. And then we possibly have the greatest English blues cover ever. It's better than the blues. When the levee breaks, should not work, but it does. It opens up the door to hip hop, to trip hop. It opens up the door to so many different things. This album's absolutely perfect for me. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, and it defines heavy rock. So I am now done. What's my conclusion of this? It's interesting going back to my records. I think that there's going to be stuff in there and there's not. And there's other stuff in there that I didn't know I have. There's albums in here that are still to be listened to, even though I've owned them for 30 years. I bought them, put them on the side. I never got round to listening to them. I haven't listened to any of this for the last 20 odd years until now. I've got a turntable and I'm going back to the stuff. This is a very interesting experiment to me. I find that when I've got these in my hand, right? When I have these albums and I'm holding them, the story I tell is a different story to when I've just created a list. And it all gets too objective. I have tried my hardest to be objective on here. And there are a ton of videos where I'm exploring objectivity as the best as I possibly can. But this isn't. These videos are subjective, and in a way they're more truthful and honest. And as with the objective ones, where you come to the conclusion it doesn't matter how hard Andy tries, it still is a subjective opinion. With this one, the fact that these are so subjective, it's not only my favourite albums, but it's the albums that I have in my collection that I've held on to. I've lost as much as is there. I've lost as much as is there. There is something of the objective in here, because although these are my favourite albums, you may look at it and go, well, that's pretty much a good list of 70s heavy rock albums. It defines something. And I think it defines a certain way my generation looked at rock music, which is entirely different to kids I meet who like heavy metal. I love heavy metal. They like heavy metal, but when we sit down and chat, it's like we're poles apart in a way. We find common ground because I love Pantera, you know, and I love Anthrax, you know. And I've grown to love Avenged Sevenfold because they're proggy. But for me, the heart and the soul and the funkiness is not there with modern metal. If you like this video, stick a like on it. If you want to see some more, subscribe. If you want to support me, you can go over to my Patreon. You can become a free member or a paid up member, and there's contents for both types. You can donate some money to my cause, the Andy Edwards cause, over at PayPal. I'm very appreciative of that because that's what feeds the family and keeps my kids in clothes. If you want to become a member here as well, you can get to see the videos early, and you can also get to see exclusive videos, which I will be doing more and more. Also, I have a Substack. I've got a Bandcamp you can subscribe to if you want to listen to my music. I think we're done. Hope you enjoy this video. I'll see you on the next one.